Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Ben, this is Books with Genghis Khan, and today I want to go over my high priority series on my TBR. I saw Theo at Rekindled Reader just do this, and he really inspired me to figure out my own priority TBR, and it was really tough because I have hundreds of series on the TBR that I really want to get to and try. So I wasn't able to narrow it down to 10, but I got it to under 20 that are the ones that really are making me feel guilty that I haven't read them yet. Some for years and years I've been wanting to get to, and they're like this yoke around my neck, this burden that I can't wait to have off me and to have read all these series and new authors for a lot of them. But it's tough for me to get into a new series. I usually have a few other ongoing series going or authors that are already favorites of mine that I want to get to more of their books, and there's just an initial inertia that you have to overcome to get into a completely new series with its new set of world-building rules and history, and maybe for a new author, a different writing style. And so when the choice comes for me to continue with an author I know or in a series I'm already liking and enjoying, usually the familiar one wins out in that calculus. But I gotta push myself more to try new series because a lot of these I feel like I just should have read a long time ago. These authors are releasing new books, and I wonder if I'm gonna be liking those series or should be trying those new books by those authors, and I want to get to these earlier ones by them. And so I have a bunch I want to get to. Let me know in the comments which of these you'd be most excited about me trying. I've categorized these somewhat, and the first category are the ones that are really pillars of modern fantasy. And I say fantasy because I think I only have one sci-fi series in here. So it's mostly fantasy, and I, over the last bunch of years since getting back into adult fantasy, have tried to do the ones that are really popular in recent years, but kind of on the like Reddit fantasy top novels polls that have been kind of there for years and years, up towards the top, and the ones that seem to that most people in BookTube or in the community have read, and the conversation really has been building around them for years and years, and maybe have influenced other authors and more recent series. And I feel like, man, some of these, I don't have my full fantasy credentials yet until I'll have read some of these. And the first one of those is The Dark Tower by Stephen King. I recently just loved 11/22/63. I think King has the potential to become a favorite author, and this is a series I've seen so many of my BookTube friends just loving, with some of those middle books, like the stretch of book 2 through 4 seem to have a bunch of people's favorite fantasy books in the genre, and the ending is divisive. I want to be able to join that conversation and know what people are talking about. And just Stephen King is just this huge author, and he has this big, huge epic fantasy series at the heart of this multiverse. That's so cool. I want to be able to dive into all of that and understand all the connections. So this is a major, major priority for me to get to. Another one of those pillars of the genre I have not touched yet is Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn by Tad Williams. Here's the Dragonbone chair. I know a lot of my favorite fantasy authors kind of have Tad Williams as an influence, and I want to see what's going on with this. Kind of supposed to be a bridge between the older Tolkien-esque fantasy with the modern fantasy, and it's just a huge piece of the history of modern fantasy puzzle that I have not been exposed to yet. And I think maybe at the start of next year I might do this because some other people are doing it, like Josh at Red Fury Books, and I might hitch a ride because I need a little kick to do this one, a little extra motivation, since I know it's supposed to be a little bit slower paced, and that's always a little bit intimidating if I'm going to really enjoy that kind of slower paced, slow burn style. But when I do, those can be some of the most rich experiences you can have, like the one I'm having with Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderlings right now. And on the theme of pillars of the genre, you cannot have modern fantasy without Ursula K. Le Guin. And I, a few years ago, started the Earthsea cycle with Wizard of Earthsea, and I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful tale, just elegantly told. And for some reason, I just did not continue, and I lost momentum with it. And so I want to read this whole thing, including the short stories. And it's in this beautiful omnibus with great illustrations. But I'm going to have to go back and reread book 1, I think, soon, and get back into it. I just want to do the whole thing. I want to get to all our sci-fi too. But for a series, this one has just been a weight on me for years, especially since I started it and never continued. Now we're going to move to a few that are still fairly widely read and more popular than most series, but in more of a smaller niche than those last few. And one of those is The Black Company by Glenn Cook. I think that's 10 books, and they're all on the shorter side, which does lower that initial activation energy required for me to get into this. And I've been really interested after reading Malazan and knowing it's a big influence on Steven Erikson, and want to see what is going on with that. Same for R. Scott Baker's Second Apocalypse series, but this is supposed to be kind of the darker cousin of Malazan in modern fantasy, and lots of people that I follow have been reading this series in recent years, and I've been feeling a little left out. And the going really dark and gritty does not really intimidate me too much. It's just knowing that it's more dense philosophically, and the prose maybe on the denser side that has been kind of putting me off, especially because it's a big one, and I feel like if I get into it, it might take over my life for a while. And then here's a sci-fi series that I think I've seen more comments on my channel from commenters just wanting me to pick up over the years than any other series. That is the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. I think it's 10 interconnected standalones. I love that idea that they're all just taking place in this shared universe, but maybe telling self-contained stories. And here's Consider Phlebas Book 1, but I know you can read them kind of out of order, and I have almost all of them that I've been picking up slowly from used bookstores over the years. I need to expand my kind of experience with the sci-fi genre. There's a lot of British sci-fi authors that I'm interested in, like Banks and Reynolds and Peter F. Hamilton. So this one, though, is the one I feel most drawn toward, that I think is going to be the biggest hit with me. All right, now to ones that are just very personal priority series that I think I might love and that could become favorites of mine. And here is the Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. I just ate up his Faithful and the Fallen series and enjoyed the sequel of Blood and Bones series to that as well. And I just connect so much to his writing style, the character writing, the action, the really gritty kind of war scenes that are so prevalent in these. I just absolutely love. And so I think this series has a chance to become a favorite of all time. I did just put this off because I needed to binge Faithful and the Fallen. I would not have done well having to wait for in between some of those books. And so I've been waiting for the final book to come out, and it is going to be releasing very soon. And so once that full series is ready, nothing is going to be stopping me from reading this one and returning to a favorite author for the first time in a long time. Here's a series that I rarely see talked about, but I think it could hit big, and that is the Raven's Mark trilogy by Ed McDonnell, starting with Blackwing. So Library of Alexandria. Alan has been chatting up this series for years, and I have really liked Ed McDonnell's more recent epic fantasy series, the Red Winter Chronicles. And this is his earlier trilogy, and it's supposed to be a little bit more grimdark. Don't quote me on this, but I think the main character has a raven tattoo that is sentient or can come alive. But I know that just a minor part of the premise, if it's anything like that, that sounds really cool. And just knowing that I connect to his sensibility and his writing already means I can't wait to get to his earlier series. I really prefer to read authors' works kind of in order of publication, especially if they're still kind of writing and towards the beginning of their career. I want to be able to track their writing development a little bit more. So, it makes me feel a little guilty I haven't gone back and read his earlier stuff. Here is one from Ian C. Esselmond. This is the Path to Ascendancy series. And this was originally a trilogy for a while, but he released a new book that I think is part of this series or just connected to it. But I read Malazan Book of the Fallen a few years ago, and I wanted to get to this prequel series to really be able to make all of the connections as far as I could while things were still fresh in my memory with what happened later because of the character crossovers and all these kind of foundational events that happened before this series started. But it's been years now, so I've lost a lot of those details, and I still want to get to this while at least some things are there. And I've heard great things about this series. I was not in love with Esselmond's Malazan Empire novels, but this is supposed to be considerably stronger with people who have read all Malazan books. And so I like being in that world. And Esselmont, for some of his books, the tighter ones, like Knight of Knives or Orb Scepter Throne, really hit with me. So I think this series could really work. All right, the next one might be the true highest priority one on my TBR, just based on an author that I really think I will love, and the things I've heard about the series for years now, just with how strong of an experience people have with it, and that is The Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. So he's already one of my favorite authors, but as the co-author duo of James S.A. Corey, and I'm just so curious about what his solo writing is like. Since this one's not a completely new author, I feel a little less of a barrier for starting it, which is good. It's also a pretty short series overall, but it can fit within this one omnibus with 4 short books. The premise of following these characters across kind of a whole lifetime really appeals to me. And just, I think this is a slam dunk for me. I should have read it yesterday. Recently, I finished the Dandelion Dynasty, which was kind of that highest of high priorities kind of hanging over my head. And so that's what this is now, just taunting me. And I really need to get to that, and then to the Dagger and Coin series after, to kind of just catch up on all the Daniel Abraham. Speaking of catching up, one of the first series I read in adult fantasy was the Rhaenyra Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan, and I had a really good time with it. I didn't totally love everything about it, but I did have a good time, and I meant to continue with the prequel series, which is Legends of the First Empire. And here's Age of Myth, Book 1, these beautiful covers, and I, just like with Path to Ascendancy, I meant to get to this sooner and closer to when I read the later series to be able to make all those connections, because I know that Sullivan wrote it to show a lot of connections between this much farther future in Rhaenyra Revelations and kind of telling the original ancient history. And if your memory was fresh of the later series, you would kind of know kind of what the later civilization kind of remembers accurately or inaccurately about this ancient history, which would have been really cool. But my memory for a lot of that is basically out the window, so I'd be starting this kind of fresh, but I don't really want to go reread that later series, so whatever. If I end up loving this original prequel series and then the Bridge series, I'll probably do a reread of Revelations to be able to make all those connections. And Michael J. Sullivan reached out at some point and offered to send me the entire 6-book hardcover collection, and that was such an amazing gift, and I want to honor that gift and give this one a read. And I think I'll be seeing him because I'll be going to the Dragonsteel convention and he might be there. And so I want to get to this at least maybe one book before Dragonsteel. But there's so many things in my way. I'll be probably rereading the 4 Stormlight books before then. And just started a bunch of really huge series that I want to keep some momentum with the Vorkosigan saga and the Last Kingdom series. I'm still trying to finish up a couple other ones like Alex Varys. And there's always new stuff that's kind of catching my eye as a voracious mood reader. And so, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to end up getting to this. So I hope if I see Michael J. Sullivan at Dragonsteel, that he won't hold that against me if he remembers. But it was a wonderful gift, and I can't wait to dive into this series, because a lot of people do seem to love it. So back in 2018, when I just got swept away reading fantasy again, I did not have any modern fantasy books at home to pull from to read. So after trying to check out online what was some popular series and also just wanting to browse and see what caught my eye, I went to Barnes & Noble and bought a ton of books, including some that became my favorites like Faithful and the Fallen and Red Rising and Jade City. And I just went on this huge shopping spree, and I've read most of what I got on that very first Barnes & Noble run, but not everything. And so this has been a purchase that is the longest standing one, I think, along with the Gunslinger that I got on that day. And this is Shadow of What Was Lost, Licanius, Book 1. This is James Islington's debut trilogy, and the buzz for Will of the Many has just been overwhelming since that came out. And I have not read that and want to wait until I go back and read his earlier trilogy. And the next bunch of books, including this one, are of more recent series that I kind of missed the window where there was some buzz around it and there was a lot of chatting, and so a lot of those I feel guilty that I waited so long, and now the buzz has died down. There's less of that push for me to actually pick them up. But from what I know about this trilogy, it's supposed to be really intricately plotted, have some maybe time travel elements. Those things really appeal to me, even if it is a bit clunky as a debut series. And the fact that people are really connecting to Will of the Many is also just driving me to read this soon. So I'm so intrigued to get to this. But this has been truly the longest TBR veteran of mine. One that wasn't too far behind is The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. This is book one of the Winnowing Flame trilogy. In my early days getting back to fantasy, I was watching a lot of the very popular booktubers like Daniel Green and Elliot Brooks. And Elliot Brooks was raving about this series as a kind of underrated gem. And I think they've reprinted them in the US, so they're more available. But back when there was that website, I can't remember what it's called now, that kind of an Amazon affiliated website in Britain that you could get free shipping of books from the UK. I got the series from them, and it's just been sitting on my shelf for years and years, and is one of those that I feel like it doesn't get talked about too much now, so why would I really need to pick it up when there's a lot of other things to get to? But I think it might really hit, but I've just been patiently waiting its turn. Same thing for The Books of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. This is another Allen TBR pick that kind of was really popular in the fantasy sphere while the books were coming out, but I don't know, the buzz and hype kind of died down. He's still publishing books though, and I want to go back and see what this series is all about, because it's supposed to be pretty unique in terms of its storytelling and the prose style, and I'm just curious, and I want to see if it connects. Here's another Allen TBR veteran. This is The Greatcoats by Sebastian de Castell. So I know this is on the breezier, more swashbuckling side, and every now and then that type of book just really does the trick for me, like with Bernard Cornwell's Sharp series. And Sebastian de Castell keeps releasing books in this world with different sequel series, and I don't know whether I need to be trying to get those or if I'm not going to like this series at all, and I want to go back and see what's going on with it. But again, like with Winnowing Flame, it felt like it had a big moment for a while, and now less people are reading it. And so I always wonder when that happens, is it something that just was more of a recency bias thing and doesn't have staying power because it doesn't have that real huge impact that other series that kind of maintain their place in the conversation, like Realm of the Elderlings or Maz and Book of the Fallen. So I'm always curious about things like that, but want to give this one a go. And a really similar thing with this series, which is the Founders Trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is just an author name that I've been hearing for years since getting into Sanderson. Authors kind of writing in that same style, Brent Weeks and Sanderson, Bennett with these hard magic systems are all around the same time. And this had a lot of buzz for a while, but now Bennett's writing some other stuff. I think he just released fantasy mystery, The Tainted Cup, that's getting a lot of good reviews. But I want to go back to some of his earlier series, the Divine Cities one as well, because these were pretty popular, and I think it's a style I could still really connect with. Another last TBR veteran is Powder Mage. So I know McClellan is now in the middle of a new series in a different world, the Glass Immortals one, and this one was a kind of big series with an initial trilogy and then a sequel series. I don't know, a disciple of Sanderson who's writing with a kind of a Napoleonic era world building inspiration, some flintlock fantasy. There's a lot of elements here that I think make it appealing, and this series seems to have a lot of conflicting opinions about it, which is yet one more of those little barriers to starting a very long, expansive series where it's just going to be worth that time investment. But those are a whole bunch of my just absolute highest priority series. Man, I had dozens and dozens more to choose from, but these are the ones that have been kind of staring at me from the shelves for years, just calling out for their turn. So let me know which of these you really would love to see me try, or that you think I might really connect to deeply. I'd love to hear that, and I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you later.